Welcome to Pass the Balance Sheet, the podcast where we talk unscripted about the messy truth of business no one talks about. Most business conversations stop at the numbers, the balance sheet, the P&L, the metrics we're told we should care about. And don't get me wrong, those things matter a lot. But after years of building businesses, working alongside founders, and sitting in the hardest conversations, we've learned something important. The numbers rarely tell the whole story. They don't show the pressure behind payroll, the stress of cash flow when revenue looks fine on paper, the decisions you second guess at 2 in the morning, the moments when everything looks successful but nothing feels settled. This podcast exists because those conversations matter, and they're usually the ones no one's willing to have out loud. So here we go. Past the balance sheet, past the reports, past the highlight reels, we talk honestly about leadership, money, mistakes, and the reality of building something that actually has to last. And if you've ever felt like your business looks better on paper than it feels in real life, you're in the right place.
And I think what's important to name right away is this. Most business owners aren't avoiding the numbers because they don't care. They're avoiding them because the numbers carry weight. They represent responsibility, risk, other people's livelihoods. And when something feels off, it's easier to just stay busy than to slow down and really take a look at what's happening. I've seen incredibly capable people build meaningful businesses while quietly carrying the stress they don't feel allowed to talk about. So, this podcast isn't about calling anyone out. It's about calling things forward, having the conversations that actually move the business and the person running it in the healthier direction. Because once you're willing to look past the balance sheet, you stop feeling like something is wrong with you and start realizing you're just in the messy middle, building something real. I think it's important that our listeners know a little bit about us and our backgrounds before diving in. This way, they have a background behind the faces. And Kash, do you mind sharing a little bit about your career and how you got to this podcast today?
Yeah. Thanks to all of our listeners that are here. I hope you enjoy this journey that we are embarking on because we are definitely in the messy middle of driving this vehicle, sometimes without wheels. Um, but I started my career going to college. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And so I just did a very general business degree. I felt like I could get through. It was going to open a lot of doors. And once I got into the business world, I would kind of figure out what I wanted to do. Would it be marketing? Would it be sales? Would it be finance? And shortly after graduating, I met my husband and we started a family. And I thought that I really wanted to stay home and be the stay-at-home mom, bread maker, and just live this fantasy at home. And I was awarded the opportunity, and about 7 months in, realized it was miserable. Like, I absolutely hated it. Loved being a mom, loved being a wife, just didn't feel like I had purpose or was using my education. And so there was this company that was looking for an executive assistant to the CFO, and the company was in manufacturing. And I thought in my head, very simplistically, I am the CEO, the COO, the CFO of my house every single day. I'm like negotiating with a tiny terrorist. I am, manhandling the finances of our life and making sure the mortgage gets paid. And, we're going to dinner or we're going to events or whatever, and we're presentable. So I'm also the marketer of our family. So in my head, I'm like, I don't really know much about finances of a business, but it can't be that hard. And so I got into the business and started to just fall in love with how intertwined the finance department is with the entire business. Everything that happens within the business flows through the finance department, whether it be spending money, acquiring assets, paying off debts, acquiring debts. And being in manufacturing, we were also dealing with cost accounting, which was fascinating to me. And I had a phenomenal mentor in that CFO that was sitting there when I got to the company. And I slowly started to learn. She didn't just treat me like an executive assistant. She really treated me like a human being that deserved to learn if they wanted to. So I started to learn how the balance sheet flows into the P&L, and how the P&L is different from the cash flow statement, and if marketing does this, sales needs to do this, and procurement needs to do this. And I just fell in love with it. And so I decided to go back and get my master's degree in accounting and finance. And a couple months into getting my master's degree, she said, Cash, I have some family issues and I have to exit the company, but I'm going into a meeting right now to let them know that I'm doing this, and I'm going to vet you to sit in this seat as CFO. And I thought to myself, like, you have lost your marbles to give me a chance to do this. But also on the flip side, it was kind of like the devil and the angel on your shoulders. Like, who would trust me to do this? And on the other side, it's like, when am I ever going to get an opportunity to do this, even if I get eaten alive by sharks? And so I said, yeah, yes, of course I'll do this. And so I eventually moved up. I worked for that company for almost a decade, growing within that industry, and spent the last almost 3 years as the CEO of that company. Um, and so along that, I've been in the food industry, I've been in manufacturing, I have done real estate on the side. And I now own my own accounting firm, working with all types of businesses, from the restaurant business, the construction business, the real estate business. And so yeah, I love finances. I love the story you get to paint in every situation. But enough about me. I think we should know a little bit about you and what got you here.
Wonderful story. Um, let's see. I've always been very goal oriented, career oriented. I wanted to emulate my grandma, who has been my kind of example of a very strong leader, whom a lot of people respected. She commanded this, respect to her and in all of her dealings. And she carried this little green organizer with all of her contacts, and she just always looked so important. And that's something that I always wanted to emulate. In school, I was kind of a terrible student, and really by choice, because I started working since I was 12, and just did not have the energy to do all my homework for all of my classes in school. So I pretty much just chose, math is going to get done, my business classes are going to get done, and everything else I just kind of barely skated by. But nevertheless, I was, as soon as I graduated from high school, I went to a specialized school for accounting, because I just did not want to wait for a 4-year degree and, drag things out. I knew exactly what I wanted. And at 19, I had my first job in the real estate sector. Thinking back, after I've eaten a fair share of my shit sandwiches throughout my career, I was looking back and thinking it probably was my favorite job when I put all things into the picture and consideration. I grew so much. I had this wonderful big office, and I felt so important. And but nevertheless, my journey up the ladder was, started out a little bit slow. As you know, I was a little naive as a very young, driven, and hungry person. Didn't really understand the time that it takes to, to stand out, to build your skill set. I was kind of, you know, uh, had a lot of discouragement in my early career with expecting results in immediately in the place where I was excelling. What I didn't realize when I stepped into the job market is that, it's a bilateral, I think is the word, relationship, or bidirectional, I mean to say. We're trading I'm trading my time to gain a skill set, and I got discouraged early on because I've always, I wanted to learn more. So I took on more projects and, really wanted to demonstrate myself beyond the role that I was hired on to demonstrate my hunger and my skills, and was very disappointed in my first years that I didn't see that immediate impact. And I my mom and grandma have always been a wonderful source of support and in building my character and giving me strength. And um, you know uh, after talking with them for um, many nights where I would cry, talking about how unfair things were, talking about my terrible boss, Brad, whose name I will be bringing on playfully throughout this journey, as to demonstrate some of my adventures with him, and my adventures in my career path. But nevertheless, one day I started seeing things differently. I kind of shifted my perspective and realized that, you know, everything that I take on, I am building my own resume, building a resume that nobody else can match to the T. So I would just pick projects that interested me. I love software. I guess I learned that I had a talent in seeing how things interconnect in a business, just like same as something that you learned as well. But learning how different departments interconnect and kind of make up the whole business, and where some problems arise and where things break when there isn't a process present. So I would always tackle projects where I would explore various software and kind of build these systems where the interconnectedness is transitioned with automated tools. So nevertheless, that's kind of how I built my resume and my set of talents, is by just exploring, trying to solve problems. And I no longer was looking for an immediate impact. I realized I started taking things less personally when I started looking at my bosses from a different perspective, and trying to see their perspective of cutting costs. Just because my goal was always to be CFO doesn't mean that it's going to happen, on this boss's watch type of thing. Maybe they didn't have that budgeted. They didn't have my dream budgeted. And so I just kind of started, going from different business to different business, and learning the various problems that I can solve in various industries. So I have dabbled in quite a bit of industries. My favorite is real estate and construction. I have also worked for a nonprofit organization, a wonderful nonprofit. I have also sat on a board of a wonderful nonprofit as a treasurer for 6 years. I have worked in, internet startup, or I guess not so startup, and internet business, which was a startup back in the 90s, and um, lasted over 20 years. Um, and I've done a little bit of that cost accounting. Most of my industries have really been in the service sphere. And when I became a fractional CFO, I started dabbling in a lot of the cost accounting and the selling of products and not services. So that was very interesting as well. And somewhere, let's see.
You're okay. I think like the important thing to like notate in both of these is that our stories are so different. And when you
Mm-hmm.
look at the realm of corporate finance, if you will, that no two CFOs are alike, no two industries are alike. There's no cookie cutter. Whereas when you look at sales or you look at marketing or you look at um, even procurement a little bit, that there is like a foundational level of skills that you need, and as you grow, right, like marketing, the big thing right now is social media. It's not really
Mm-hmm.
going to change. You need to know social media regardless of where you work. But when you start to look at corporate finance, there's so many nuances, and the
Mm-hmm.
jobs that you qualify for I certainly wouldn't qualify for, and the jobs that I may qualify for, you may not. And so the beauty in all of this in this podcast is that we are able to bring perspectives and expertise in different areas, and we both have a seat at the table, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. But you said something so powerful in your
Hmm.
kind of story, and that was, I ate a lot of shit sandwiches. And I felt that to my core, because I don't have enough fingers and toes in my entire household to count the number of shit sandwiches that I ate. But I think that it's really a testament to the podcast ideation and how it came to be, and the fact that so much of my success, I'll just speak to that, won't speak for everyone, but so much of my success came from the growth in eating those shit sandwiches and
Mm-hmm.
sitting in that messy middle, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And it, I think for both of us, at least what I've been able to experience in this, not only professional realm and relationship that we share, but also in the personal relationship that we get to share as friends, is that there is very much not an ego when it comes to you and me. I feel like we can come to the table and say, I really made a mistake. Can you help me here? Give me some ideas. And I would say that is one of the biggest shifts that I've made in my career, in really taking those moments and saying, well, this was a really shitty sandwich, and what can I learn for it so that I can be a better CFO, a better leader, etc. So I would love, I think some of our listeners would love this too. I can go first if you want, but I would love to know one of those shit sandwiches that you ate that still resonates with you or you still come back to.
If you don't mind going first.
So for me, the one that keeps coming up for me, and I think it's a testament to me growing as a leader, my career, very different than yours in terms of, you said it was a little bit longer of a journey. Mine was very fast. It went a lot faster than most. And there's pros and cons to that. A lot of that, you can look back on childhood days and say, that 13-year-old had to be an adult at 13. And is that healthy and right? And I feel like when I look back on my career, there's a little bit of that I have to reconcile. And my career went so fast, but there were so many times where I was operating at a teenage level, but sitting in, a 35-year-old chair. And so my very first like shit sandwich was going from CFO to CEO, which is very different seats to sit in a business. One is very much the protector, the risk adverse person, the analyzer, and one is the decision maker ultimately. But there was quite a bit of ego in me when I sat in that chair. Like, I'm going to make this decision and you guys are going to follow me. And what I learned over time was I had an operations person that was working for me, and he actually came to a one-on-one. And he said, I'm not going to share his name, but I will share with him when this comes out because he will probably get a little kick out of it. But he said, Cash, you are a terrible leader. And I said, yep, you're right. And I in that moment, I really could have went on the defense, and a little bit I did, but I had to sit with that. And, I can keep going down this road and treating my employees like numbers, or I can really turn into this compassionate leader that still can lead a company, can create successes within the company, be the face of the company, but doesn't need to rule with an iron fist. Like that's not going to make my mark on anything. And so my first shit sandwich was feeling like I was in control and this dictator, if you will. And I had to transition over to, if I take care of these people, ultimately they'll take care of me. And I did see that over time. A lot of work, still working on it. But what I was able to see in myself was when I truly brought people along in the process, sometimes they still made decisions that they didn't agree with or they didn't like, but giving them the opportunity to come along that process and come along that journey and feel like they truly had a seat at the table, they were able to say, well, I don't agree with that decision you're making, but I'm going to walk out of this room and I'm going to back you 100%. And so I would say my shit sandwich is relationships matter, and how you treat people that you want to support you. Even if you're not the big fancy leader, this can be applicable to any chair you sit in within your career, but people matter.
That is such a strong point to touch on, and I feel like we can continue learning that one throughout our lives because it's hard to kind of drop the ball as we are, still human creatures. For example, I could not agree more that people matter and relationships matter. And what I have found throughout my career and also in building my own business is if you are lucky enough to find first of all, it's a big part of building your team is assessing, who is going to be your cheerleader, picking that winning team who want you to succeed, picking people who are smarter than you in their various aspects of talents. And once you have those, you better take good care of them, building lasting relationships. What I often see an error that business leaders make, business owners specifically, is they get caught up with the shiny new sale or new relationship. Somebody on the golf course is trying to get their business, and so they have an attractive, maybe year one discounted or some sort of like pull to get the interest from the business owner. And I've seen too many times the business owner jump immediately on this new opportunity to potentially save, not doing the exercise of, assessing the intangible costs of switching over, and the longevity of the discounts, not assessing the full picture, causing a ruckus and migrating everything over to this new service, only to find that you are one of 50 people on a list to call. You'll never get the time, and maybe there is a discount, but you're really paying for it in service. So I think that relationships, whether it is your executive leadership team, whether it is your employees who are building your dreams from the ground up, or your outside contractors and bankers and brokers and insurance people, your entire team of success, you really have to nurture that relationship because as you scale with time, they help you get there, and you never want to discount those relationships for a discount.
That's amazing. I couldn't have said it better myself. But I also think all of those nuggets that you dropped in that little blurb are also reasons for our listeners to come back. The things that we're going to get into, revenue to say yes to, customers that are really turning an ROI for you versus customers that possibly are a liability, margins that matter. There was so much in that we get to dig into over the course of this podcast. So thank you for sharing. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of these episodes to come and the fun topics we're going to get into, I think that we should share with the listeners how we met. Do you want to tell the story?
I sure do, yes. We met in a very challenging time. And we met when we were working for a shared umbrella of. I was a fractional CFO. You were a CFO by trade, transitioning into CEO, but for some reason decided to take a controller side gig. In any case, you got stuck with, and this is the other part of the messy truth of that we see in business is not every CFO, not every suit that you're gonna deal with is, is gonna be the best, the most knowledgeable, the best fit for you. You really have to dig through, the inventory before you settle with the right, with that right partnership. But this was not the case. There wasn't a good fit for a client that you were trying to save. And one of the last, chances that the client gave is if there was a different CFO. By that time, you had moved away. You moved moved forward. You were done with the client, but you were begged to come back and train me, as you were the only one who actually knew what was happening on the account. And during this time, I have to say it was beyond stressful. But what I started seeing early on, and where I started having, faith that I might be able to turn it around, even though I had, just everything working against me. I don't know if I ever told you this, but one of the tests of whether I was going to land the account was addressing a set of grievances from every single team member on why the account was terrible, and I had to prove all the reasons how I'm going to be different. So I just had everything working against me, but I felt like I found such a true partner in when you and I started working together. I realized that you were invested in helping me to succeed, and you obviously cared about the client. You did not want to leave with the. The perception was solely for the firm, and you still represented the firm. And so I know it didn't sit well with you either to move on with leaving that sour taste in their mouth. So um, you helped me, you trained me on all the tools that I will need to succeed with that account. And what I still, though I don't remember all the different workflows that we have worked through, what sticks out in my mind is just being so impressed and grateful with your commitment, with your dedication, and with the poise and grace that you were dealing with. You were putting out all these fires with this amazing grace. And that's something that I constantly learn from you, is that stoicism and that calm demeanor, where the sass in Sassy is there for a reason. So, it's something that I have to battle in my everyday um, tribulations, but nevertheless, I have just been so impressed with your. I remember one time you were dropping off your kids, and we were working on this complicated spreadsheet, and you were just, uh, bouncing through the different applications on the Mac. I was getting like I was just getting so anxiety driven with just the fact that you were on one tiny screen, and I would have been like huffing and puffing and probably beating up my computer, which is unfortunately something that I do. I start beating up my hardware when things don't go right for me, and you just held it together with such poise. And I knew that I had a lot to learn from you, and all of our conversations since, we have supported one another in our dreams, in our you know, getting away from our fears and actually taking the step that we have always wanted to, with this podcast being a prime example.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds exactly how I remembered it, except for you give me a lot more credit than I think I deserve. I think too, just like sharing with the listeners this since we're going to be transparent in this, the fractional CFO role was introduced to me, or I kind of engaged in this world as I was sitting as a CFO for a company and transitioning into CEO. But there was this internal fear of, if I go into the CEO seat, am I going to lose all of, my knowledge and, kind of those muscles and reflexes? Like, if I'm not using it, am I going to remember how to do it? Should I want to go back to it? So I kind of entered into the realm of fractional CFO work. And from the beginning, I was a little frustrated just because I knew my value. I had been sitting as a CFO for a rather large company. And coming in, I had to kind of prove myself, right? Like, I felt a little bit like, oh, this is the little girl that needs to prove that she has the skills to be a CFO. So we're going to put her in a controller position. And for me, I just didn't care. Like, I wanted some new experience. I wanted to continue to use those muscles. And to your point, I feel like looking back, I was the CFO on that account for a rather long
You were.
time because I was doing a lot of it and had quote unquote oversight at the end of each month. And so yes, to your point, I was so frustrated that I finally went to the fractional firm and said, I don't think this is a fit. Like, I really wanted to gain some knowledge. I really just wanted to use some muscles a few hours a month, while I was sitting as a CEO, and it just doesn't seem to be working. And I don't think I ever actually shared this with you, since we're sharing some new nuggets. They actually begged me to move into the CFO role, and I said,
Mm-hmm.
nope,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not interested. The way that this has gone down over the last couple of months, and the disorganization that I've experienced, and the feeling of lack of support, I can't see moving forward. I don't think it's in the best interest of me. I don't think it's in the best interest of you. And I don't think it's in the best interest of the client. And at that point in time, I had said, I'm willing to stay on long enough for you to find someone that will support the client in a way that makes sense. But that is like a 6 month max, right? Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
more than enough time for you to find someone. And I think, every story is meant to be. And me coming into that fractional firm wasn't for me to gain more knowledge or to use my muscles. I truly believe it was for you and I to meet, because not only have we blossomed into this beautiful friendship, but you are someone that I highly respect when it comes to corporate finance. And when I have a question about anything, like, run me through if this is how you would do it, or are we seeing things the same, or give me a different perspective? You're always in that kind of core group of CFOs that I highly respect, um, and consider reaching out to when those needs arise. And so, yeah, I think you told the story very accurately. But
I want to
I
jump
think,
in.
yes,
So sorry. I
yes,
want to
no,
jump
please do.
into elaborate why I come to you for advice and why I think this is such a wonderful partnership, because we really do complement one another. Knowing the basics, the fundamentals of business and accounting and all of that, that's one skill. But there's something, a greater skill that is required in being a leader and managing, in basically in navigating every day with the various battles that are thrown your way. And the hardest battles that I find in business are their people problems. They're different personalities, different people with different opinions, with different skill sets, different fears and insecurities come out in different ways in the workplace. And I feel like most of the conflict or lack of harmony comes with fitting those pieces together and getting those people to play nice with one another. And that is one of the big issues of, any exec leader. You can't, you have controllers and accountants doing, your everyday work. You're taking care of pictures of the problems that are very much on a high level, but you're seeing the full scope and kind of where the disconnects are. And unfortunately, a lot of the problem solving is babysitting people and navigating those different relationships and the different personalities. This is where you have quite a forte in just navigating people and knowing your worth and when to say no. Um, I have a different background that, it brought me the success that it did, but it was from a different, it was from, the foreigner mentality, if you will, as I am come from a foreign family and, for a completely different culture where, humility is valued over, bragging about your skills. Another thing is, you're constantly, it's bred into you. Hard work, hard work. You stand out with hard work. And so, with that, even though I have to say that it was that hard work, it was people seeing me, my colleagues, my various relationships who have seen me through various different grinds throughout my life. It has been them knowing and calling to me later in life, oh, Anna will take care of it. Anna knows how to solve this, because they have seen that grind. But there is a certain level of self-respect that we have to carry. We can't try to solve the world, all on our own. And I still make the mistake of trying to take on too much at once, or not speaking up about available resources and trying to carry the weight of multiple people, which gets me in trouble. It gets the business in trouble because it's not sustainable. Where you have this self-respect, you have this decency where you just are very clear with your boundaries. You let them know, you let them be known immediately, to where people don't try to cross them. And this is something that I continually learn from you, is just how to grow those boundaries myself, and to to practice them.
Which I think is a great segue into why we decided to do this or how we got here today. So I left the corporate world and around the end of October, beginning of November. And my list was very short. The company was I'm based in Utah. The company was based in another state. And I had made the decision and had the hard conversation before fully consulting with my husband. He kind of knew that it was kind of percolating. So I had the conversation while I was actually on site and basically said, like, I'm catching my flight tonight and this is going to probably be the last that we're going to engage personally. And my list of people that I was going to converse with and seek advice from was very short, but you, my friend, were on that list. And so I can't remember if it was like at the airport or if it was the day after that I had landed. I had sent kind of an SOS text basically saying, I just left my job. It might have been the stupidest decision I ever made, but to your point, like my boundaries were starting to be crossed and I was starting to see how that was affecting my personal life. And it was not for the good. And so I remember sending an SOS text like, when you have a chance, I would love to connect in the next couple of weeks. And you are like, we can talk today. And so we got on the phone and I kind of like gave you all that was going on. And at that point, my mind was just in a place of, I need to find some other form of work. And you connected me with some great people, but I had been percolating this idea of, I would really love to start my own accounting firm, which is a story for a completely different day, but it had been percolating for about 6 months. And so I met with the people that you so graciously introduced me to, and there's still great resources, but I kept coming back to this feeling of it being irresponsible to go work for someone or having them connect me with someone when I really felt led to follow my dreams in this accounting firm, however stupid it sounded at the time. And I remember in that conversation, I kind of dropped that idea to you. Like, I think that I should entertain these conversations, but I'm also really thinking about starting my own firm. And you had connected me with someone else that also has their own firm. And about 2 weeks later, you reached back out and just said, "Hey, I just want to check in, see how things are going." And I said, "I think we should really connect because in the last 2 weeks, I've started my own accounting firm and it's going actually kind of well." And so we got on the phone for just a catch up, and I kind of explained like, this has been a leap of faith. It's going way better than I expected. I think I'm really going to run with this. But I have this like weird idea. Don't think it's stupid. I've been a guest on so many podcasts, and I think it would be really fun to do a podcast. And you were like, "Oh my gosh, I've been wanting to do one too for like 18 months." But every time I sit down to work on it, I find a reason not to. I'm too busy with work, or, me and the hubby are going to go to dinner or whatever. And so we were kind of bantering back and forth and sharing this same situation of like, we really want to do this, but is it realistic? And so I don't remember if it was you or me, but I said, we should do this. And we kind of like got off the phone. And then like a day or two later, I texted you and said, all right, let's meet this weekend and put this together. And it's been so beautiful because it's a bit of accountability partner. I feel like a little bit in marriage, like on the days that I'm like weak and feeling like we are in over our heads, we can't do this. You're like, no, we got this. And on the days you're like, I just can't record today. My head's not in it. I just don't feel ready. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. We got this. And so when I have been weak, you have been strong. And when you have been weak, I have been strong. And I just think it's just a testament to this year of growth where we're both putting ourselves out there. We're both trying things that we wouldn't have done on our own because of all the excuses that I'm sure all of our listeners have experienced with them themselves. But I just am so excited for what this podcast leads to and the conversations that we get to have, and hopefully some of the people that can listen to it and take away the thought of, okay, there's other business owners or there's other leaders that are experiencing these things, and I can sleep just a little bit better tonight knowing that someone else is stressing about payroll or stressing about the bottom line or not understanding how they're going to make it to the next month. And so I thank you for jumping into this journey with me, very uneducated and unqualified, but here we are.
Here we are. And to your point, I want to deliver the same thing to our audience. I feel like some of these conversations that we've been having offline with one another are so relevant to so many business owners. And with that, I want to expose these conversations, and I really want to um, whoever our audience is, it can be an executive leader, or it could be a stay-at-home mom who just has a wonderful inspiration to start her own business and has no idea where to turn first. So I definitely I want to empower our listener. What we can promise is, through our discussions, we will talk about the uncomfortable topics, have the hard conversations, ask the hard questions. We will break things down into simple, digestible formats that any listener can catch on and, not be overwhelmed by fancy business jargon, but actually follow and, be able to emulate the steps that we're talking about. Another thing that I think our listeners can look forward to is, after establishing a baseline of these conversations about what really happens, what kinds of problems do we run into in business every day. It will be great to bring on business leaders of various industries to really demonstrate how these all of these fundamentals can be applied in different ways in different businesses, and how really a lot of businesses have similar mistake or sorry, similar problems they're trying to solve, just in different ways. So I want to be able to break that down to our listeners, and have them be able to relate by applying them to those different industries.
That's amazing. I couldn't agree more myself. We should probably start to land this plane. But I think it's important to note that in our research, like a podcast like this doesn't exist. There's a lot of very scripted, prim and proper podcasts out there, but we really, like we said, want to go beyond that and get into the nitty gritty. So we hope you'll continue on this journey. There are plenty of conversations about success, growth, and money, but not enough honest conversations about what it actually takes to sustain them. Finance doesn't exist in a vacuum. Decisions affect real people and real lives. Too much content is either overly technical or overly motivational. This podcast lives in the middle. It's about clarity, not perfection, insight, not performance, and conversations that respect how complex business actually is.
And that complexity is exactly why this space matters. There isn't one right way to build a business. Different seasons require different decisions. Our intention isn't to give a perspective advice, it's to offer perspective. Guests won't be polished, conversations won't be performative, and insight will always come before optics, because honesty is more useful than hype.
If there's one thing I hope you take from this first conversations, it's the numbers aren't the enemy. They're information, they're feedback. And when you're willing to look at them honestly, without judgment, they become a tool instead of a weight. Going past the balance sheet doesn't mean ignoring the numbers. It means understanding what they're really asking you to pay attention to.
And it means giving yourself permission to be human while building something that matters. You're allowed to feel the pressure. You're allowed not to have everything figured out yet. And you're allowed to admit when the story on paper just does not match how things feel in real life. This podcast exists to remind you that you're not behind, you're in process. So if something from today resonated, sit with it, talk about it. And when you're ready, come back and keep going past the balance sheet with us.
Thanks, everyone. See you for episode 2.